Welcome to Lovesick, the podcast where we dive into health, wellness, and relationships and their impact on the world today. Come be a part of the discussion and join our community by following us on YouTube, Instagram, and listening wherever you get your favorite podcast. Enjoy the show. Welcome back, everyone, to the official Lovesick podcast. I'm your host, Dorothea, and
Jada.
And Michael.
And today we have a very special guest. We have Edward Portillo, and he's the program manager at NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, correct?
Yes.
Okay, welcome. Edward.
Hi.
Thanks for coming here today and sitting with us on the soapbox.
Yes, it's great to be here.
Good. So we have a lot to talk about and some serious conversations. So I don't want to waste any time. I want to kind of like jump right into it.
Sure.
So if you can explain a little bit about the organization in Orange County, because this is the Orange County location, correct?
Yes. So
Okay.
NAMI is a national organization based in Virginia, Arlington, Virginia. And it's the largest grassroots organization that's focused on eliminating the stigma around mental health. So what we do, we are the Orange County affiliate. We're located in Santa Ana. And what my department does is help support families, individuals, and parents that are affected by mental illness. So we have classes that we offer. We have programming. We have forums that we do across Orange County and on Zoom. And we also have a podcast. I'm a podcast host as well. It's called It's Okay to Feel. And that's something I host on a bi-weekly basis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like the name
Me too.
of that. I really do. You know, it just feels like you make people ready to talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. So I guess my next question is, because I know you've had your own personal journey and challenges, health challenges, and with your kidneys.
Yes.
So if you can tell us a little bit about, your journey with the kidneys and exactly what happened and what type of symptoms, and then, pretty much we can take it from there after that.
Yeah. So I used to live in the Bay Area, lived there for about a year and a half. And I got health insurance. I was going to grad school, and it was like one of the first, I had like a gap. A lot of times when you're, in college or going to grad school, there's this little healthcare gap where you don't have the insurance, but you go back to school and you're like, hey, I got insurance now. So I was able
Very
to
well.
check out. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
able to get checked out, and the doctor gave me a call and said, hey, there's your numbers. I'm not really sure. Your kidneys need to be checked. I'm going to send you to a specialist. I just want to let you know. But I was starting a new job, and I said, okay, well, I'll get there. I'll get to it when I get to it. And it's not that big of a deal. It didn't seem like that big of a deal.
Right.
And I'm starting a new job. It's like, I'm not going to stop and say, well, my doctor says I got to stop now, so I have to go to this test and this test and this, I was like, I got to do my job. I got to do this new, what I'm doing here. So what ended up happening is my wife, my girlfriend at the time, now is my wife, went across the country to New Jersey for a wedding.
Mm.
And at that time, I started getting shortness of breath. And then in the plane, I was flying, and my legs just like were huge.
Wow.
They just expanded. And my wife, I get to my apartment, back to my apartment, and my wife goes, my girlfriend, she's looking up. She's like, these symptoms say that you should go to the hospital immediately.
Mm.
You have these symptoms right now. And I was like, I'm not dying. I'm
Right.
fine.
Don't we all say that, right?
Such a young person, but also
Yeah.
such a guy thing, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'll
Yeah,
walk it
yeah.
off. No big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just big legs.
It's a temporary thing.
Yeah.
If
Airplane.
it doesn't go well,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if I really have a bad, I'll go.
Yeah.
So it ended up being that way, where I couldn't even turn my blanket, like I couldn't even turn the sheets
Wow.
without my breath going,
Wow.
Ooh.
So then I said, okay, I have to go to the doctors. I'm going to go to the doctor now. So that's when I went to the doctor. they checked me in, and like once they got me into the room, they came in and they said, "Okay, your test results show us that you have congenital heart failure." I was like, "What? What?
Right.
What happened there?" And then they 15 minutes later they came back and they're like, "Actually, no, you don't have congenital heart failure. You have kidney failure."
Oh
And I
my
was like,
goodness.
"Okay, I don't know if that's good,
Right,
better. I'm
right.
not
And how
sure."
long was that between the time that your doctor said you should get these extra, you should come in?
Probably about like 2 months, 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Wow.
the trajectory was already like going down with my kidney.
Yeah.
So what I found out is that my kidney was so damaged that my doctors, they couldn't determine what was the cause.
Wow.
But there is something called FSGS, and that's something that they don't understand why you get it or what's the reasoning, but it attacks your kidney. Your body attacks your kidney. So they said that that's part of it. Your high blood pressure is a part of it, which is another thing that was like I had unmitigated high blood pressure. You know, again, you're young. You think that
Right.
it doesn't
Yep.
matter, you know. So
Mhm.
when I would see high blood pressure, I'd be like, okay, whatever. I mean, I feel
Right.
fine. I don't
Yeah.
feel like I needed to do anything different,
Yep.
you know. But that was another thing that was that was the cause. So yeah, immediately I was on dialysis. I was on a thing called nocturnal dialysis,
Oof.
which is 6 hours. So I was
Oof.
like in
Wow.
dialysis at night for it was like 3 days a week, and I still had a full-time job. So it was like
Wow.
yeah, it was
Can I, just for our audience,
yeah.
because most people don't know what dialysis, that process is like.
Yeah.
Can you describe it a little bit for
Yeah.
people? Because that
It's a
is,
process.
it is a
Yeah.
process. It is uncomfortable. It is painful. It is exhausting. It is necessary if you're at that stage.
Mhm.
And you're doing it at nighttime.
Well, that's the long extended version. That means they were really
Yeah.
doing it to you.
Yeah, no, I came in a kind of a really desperate case, but
Right.
they essentially a machine acts as your kidney. And the way that the machine acts as the kidney is that it purifies your blood.
Mhm.
And so in order for them to purify your blood, they have to stick you with a big fat needle.
Wow.
And they
And then it was like,
pump
well,
you in, pump out.
Yep.
right?
exactly.
Yep.
So they actually stick you with 2 big fat needles. And then you know, you sit there and you know, at the time I was also going to grad school. So, you know, thankfully I was able to like study and I was able to do some, you know, read and do
Right.
different things. But
That's a
overall,
lot.
it's just,
It's a lot when
very,
you're younger too.
yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
Well, dialysis is one of those things that is overwhelming for a lot of people. And it's pretty scary, especially the first time people do it, because you get hooked up and basically everything's running through a machine to filter for you for people
Right.
who've never had that experience. So you're seeing, like, you're not supposed to see stuff leave your body and then come back, right? Like, there's something about that that already is terrifying. And then
Right.
you're having this realization, my body's malfunctioning to the point where this machine has to do things for me, and now I have to go and I have to spend. So it there's this mental health aspect, there's the physical aspect, there's also
Grad school, work.
grad school,
Yeah.
and then also they don't dialysis. Rarely do they know exactly what it's going to look like or how much you're going to need,
And how long?
right? So that's one of those things when you're doing it. It's kind of this ongoing thing, and as it filters and whether the body continues, and then what the next step is for you. For example, like if you need a transplant, waiting to get one, which is its own journey.
Yeah, no, and it all depends also on the staff, the people that work with you, how they make you feel. You know, everyone around you is usually, you know, if I was probably the youngest, you know, person there. A lot of them are older. They're already, you know, it doesn't. It's not. There's really not a lot of positive things you can say about a dialysis clinic.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's really.
Yeah.
It's
No.
really a tough place to be at.
Yeah.
And fortunately, actually, I had a guy who was next to me. That's another story, but he was a really nice guy that was like very chipper. He was only there for 3 hours, but every time he would like, you know, we always talk about different things, and it was a blessing to have somebody like that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, but then it was also the road to get a transplant is long in California. Now, when I was first to 2016
Mhm.
when it happened, it was like 7 years or 8 years for the if you're in LA County to get a transplant if you're on just on the list.
Oh my
Wait a
gosh.
Yeah,
second.
Wait,
and
wait.
remember, you're on the
Wow.
list because you're in desperate need.
But wait, you're saying that it took 7 or 8 years before you actually got the transplant?
No,
No.
that's if I was just on the list.
Okay.
But now because of
Jeez.
COVID, it's 10 years
Wow.
in LA County.
And that's an average.
That's an average.
Some people are
Yeah.
longer because
Oh
you got to
my
remember the people who get it shorter.
Yeah.
Right.
That means there's other people who are waiting even longer.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
But then also, what was that point in the moment where they were like, you need to get
Yeah.
a transplant? Like how
How long was
Was
your
it-
process?
Yeah,
How
how
long
did
was
they
your
come up
process?
Well,
with
you
it?
you have to first demonstrate that you're qualified to get a transplant. So you can start doing all these tests for different. There's like certain university hospitals that do transplants.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get all these different things that you do where you have to limit what you drink, watch what you eat, do all the things that you're supposed to be doing for your
Mhm.
checkups. And then they do all these different tests where they check your heart rate, can you run, can you do all these different, they do all these, and then they go before a committee, and then the committee just says, okay, this person is good enough
Oh my
just to be on the list.
It's
Oh,
it's
Just
a
to be on the
huge
list to
process.
I
wait
know, that's
for
insane.
10
Right.
years.
And part of it
Yeah.
is part of the argument is knowing people who have had transplants. Part of it is because you're always going to have to maintain a regimen afterwards.
Right.
Right,
So
right,
because
right.
there's not enough organs, they want to make sure that the right people,
Right.
theoretically, however you scale that, the right people or the best candidates get it
Yep.
because they don't want to give this life-saving portion of someone else that was this donation of life to someone who maybe doesn't take it as seriously. So
Right.
they want to check are you going to be consistent about what you eat? Are you going to be
Mhm.
consistent about your lifestyle, the medication afterwards? Because the body wants to reject something that is foreign,
Mhm.
even though it is necessary, right? So then you're on certain drugs and there's a whole protocol afterwards.
Yeah.
And there's it's a lifelong change, really.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so they really make it hard. And then also there's demographics, right? I have a loved one who had a heart and lung transplant.
Wow.
Mm.
She's a very small woman.
Wow.
She was in California and was on the list. The estimation for her was about 8 years. She was not going to make it because she was in her
Gosh,
60s
that
at the
is
time.
scary.
And we had to sit down. They're kind of extended family for me, right? So when they asked me to come over and have this conversation, I'm like, I am not qualified. I'm making family decisions. But the decision was stay in California. Or demographically, she's Hispanic and small, and there was a disproportionately higher chance if she went to Arizona. But
Right.
again, if she went to Arizona, she had to start over on the list and start
Mm.
over on the whole process. So there was
Yeah.
a
Because it's different
chance.
state laws.
And it's a chance. So she had to move to Arizona
Wow.
and do. So it was either move to Arizona and do that and start all over in the hopes that that demographic is more common and you'll have more matches there, or stay in California and wait on the list and
Yeah.
maybe or maybe not make it. And in her case, because of her age, she went to Arizona. She literally
Mm.
moved there and stayed there for 6 years. So she stayed there for a couple years while she was on the list. Then part of the agreement when she got the organ was you won't leave because you have to have the follow-up and all the
Oh, yeah.
protocol and all that stuff. Because these are precious organs, if ever I could make a case for organ donation at the end of your life,
Right.
you're going to save multiple lives.
Right.
And the life you save is going to really be meaningful. So they want the people to really value that gift. But it's such a hard, complex thing. So when you're going through it, trying to last to get to the point. I mean, I can't imagine that process, Ed. What was that like?
I mean, it's devastating.
Yeah.
Like I sat with my girlfriend at the time in the hospital in the ICU, and I said, I
Mm.
mean, you don't have to deal with this. You
Yeah.
you didn't sign up for this. You signed up for a guy who was relatively healthy, and you thought it was going to be nice, good guy. So I understand if you want to leave and you want to break. I understand.
Right.
But she, she stayed, and she's so. even in the midst of all of those bad things and things that I was not, looking forward to or knew was going to happen with my health, I still had things that were, showing me signs of hope or positivity.
Right.
And so my wife my wife now was one of those people. The person that sat next to me at the dialysis clinic was
Right.
another person that was like, wow, this guy's hopeful. This guy's
Right.
positive.
Wow,
Wow, it
yeah.
gives me a little bit of hope. And I had a really great support system where I worked as well. So that was really helpful. But yeah, the process is hard. The process is you really have to have like a mindset that um it's a whole total change.
Yeah,
The
I can
way you
imagine.
like the way that you can't drink enough water.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you
I
say, you
mean,
can only drink
true.
like 40 ounces or 38 ounces or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like that's nothing.
Right.
And then the way that you have to eat, there's certain things that you can't do. And so, fortunately, almost 3 years into my experience, my aunt calls out of the blue and she says, "I want to get tested to donate my kidney to you."
Mm.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was back now in Southern
Oh,
California.
wow.
I'm originally from Southern California, and we went to UCLA, and she was a match,
Oh, what a blessing.
and she gave me her
Yeah.
kidney,
Oh,
and
that's amazing.
she's not even blood related. She was like
Wow.
married into our family.
Yeah. Yeah.
My mom's brother,
Okay.
and so that was just a beautiful,
Yeah.
That's
experience
wonderful.
to be a part of it. Yeah. But yes, there's a whole regimen after.
Right.
You have to take a bunch of medication. You have to, be close to the hospital
And
for
this
like
is
the first
after
6 months
your
after your
transplant.
transplant.
Okay.
And so I was at UCLA during that time,
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely a miracle for in my situation.
I do have a question. During that time after the transplant, do the doctors give you like this period of, well, between this time and that time after the transplant is like the most dangerous time that could go wrong for you? You know how some
Case
doctors,
probably.
yeah, when you have a surgery, something like that, and they say, well, if you can make it through this time frame, then you should be okay, with your body's not rejecting the
Yeah.
kidney or the medications. So did they tell you anything like that?
Well, there isn't. They want you to be close for at least 6 months,
Okay.
and they think that after 6 months, then they release you back to your nephrologist or your kidney doctor,
Hmm.
and then you see that transplant doctors every 6 months or every 3 months just to monitor you, and then eventually every year just to check up. And so it's supposed to like dissipate the amount of times that you're supposed to visit them.
Hmm.
In my case, I kept on seeing them.
Mm.
So I was called a complex case, but in a good way, or a difficult case in a good way. One of the doctors told me that.
Hmm.
And so what ended up happening is I did get a rejection initially. And so I got treated on that. And
Okay.
and then after that, I was kind of like this. I don't know if a lot of people can relate to this because this is maybe a unique situation in my case, but I was always called back every 2 or 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh,
I was
wow.
never fully released back to my kidney doctor.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I was always like, well, your test, well, we'll see. Let's just have you come back.
Yeah.
Let's have you come back. Let's have you come back. So I wouldn't recommend that. I probably now, next time around, I would not be so, you know, I would probably advocate a little bit more for myself because I was just
Right.
saying like, okay, well, a doctor says I got to come back,
That's
Yeah.
what we
but
discussed.
Yeah.
Yep.
the issue is that you don't see the same doctor because they're not your kidney doctors. They're just the transplant doctor that are looking over your your test results and saying, okay, well, this is good, this is bad. So I would get a different person's opinion every time that I came. It wasn't like I
Mhm.
had this. So one person would say, "Oh, you're doing good. It looks like things are good." And then you come back 2 weeks later and then it's like, "Oh, let's just see what happens on your next blood test.
Right.
Let's just see." So that was a very, hard position to be. I had to eventually like email and call UCLA and say like, "What are you guys doing? You're kind of like
Right.
hanging
Yep.
like
Yeah.
you're like dangling me. You're back and forth, and I'm what am I supposed to do here?" Because my kidney doctor was saying, "Well, I don't really want to say anything to do differently than UCLA because it sounds like UCLA is doing whatever."
Oh,
Not to slam UCLA. I mean,
Yeah.
UCLA
No,
has
no,
a good,
no.
they are
Yeah.
world class. They
sure.
are world
Right.
class, but from my experience, it was just mixed messages.
But
Well, it sounds like you were being
mentally,
an advocate for yourself,
Yeah.
though, too, because that's like the biggest thing that we always talk about, where it's like you can be a professional and come through and tell me this, and this, but you also know yourself too. And it's like if it's like I don't want to see, say this a different doctor every 2 weeks, like that's why you reached out to your kidney doctor, because it's like, look, you're the person I see, you're the person that knows everything I've been going through. And again, it's not to slam this particular doctor, I'm just saying in general, then it's like you have to know for yourself when do you put your foot down and you're kind of like, okay, this is what I need to also make me feel better and also with your mental health as well, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
mentally.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
want to know. Like, how did your girlfriend at the time and you mentally, how did you even deal with the sound like a roller coaster, basically up and down
Everything. Yeah.
for the whole entire process? So, I guess people would like to know, what did you guys do? Apparently, she was great because now she's your wife. At that time, your girlfriend. So she definitely was in for the long haul, which was good for you. And like you said, the guy that was in the room, sometimes people are placed in situations for reasons.
Right. Right.
So that was to help you, I'm sure, mentally to cope with what
You're
you were
going through.
going through.
Mhm.
So if you want to tell people, what did you do? If you did anything in particular about how did you guys cope with it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, is our faith. We're people of faith. We have a Christian background, and I think that again goes to the people that we worked with, the church that we went to, was a big support. I think the biggest thing is like that commitment, knowing that, because again, like we were talking about this right before we
Right.
started, is that like you don't people that are disabled sometimes don't look disabled,
Absolutely.
and they aren't treated like they're disabled,
hmm
and
You're right.
so I
We,
feel
we
like
talked about this before on
I feel
air.
like I would walk around like, and I wouldn't want to, I have like track marks all around me for all the dialysis.
Sure.
I always want to wear long sleeve shirts. I always want to like, I don't want to let people know like, okay, yeah, you know, I can't do this certain thing because I have to go to dialysis tomorrow, so I
Right.
can't celebrate with you because I might overdo it with eating or drinking, that
hmm
type of thing. So it's I think there's also that part of myself of like maybe there's a it's not really like a coping mechanism, but it's just like a resilience.
hmm
There's a resilience that I think I had inherently that was also inwardly and outwardly that showed people like, okay, he's capable even though he's all these bad things are happening.
hmm
So I think that those are probably the two things that there's something inside in resilience that I developed, but there's also the social side that I had that I was a big support that really did help
Yeah.
during the process during the whole time.
Yeah, that definitely helps. I think when people have support, no matter where it comes from, it gives you hope.
Yes.
Yep. Even at your darkest hour and you think there is no hope or you don't feel like you see any light at the end of the tunnel, when you have those type of positive people around you, then you begin to believe, and like you said, you have a nice and a serious faith base. When you're in times of challenges like that, you need it.
Yeah.
Right.
You need
Exactly.
it. Yeah. And that's what helped you to get through it. But I keep thinking about that man that was in the room with you, that it was the right person for you during that time.
Well, side note, I mean, if we're gonna bring him up again, it's a very unique situation because
Yeah.
everyone, all the nurses were saying, Mr. Jones is gonna come, Mr. Jones is gonna come. Oh, Mr. Jones, Mr. Jones, and it turns out that I mean, this is just a wild off-topic thing, but
Yeah.
he's a historical figure because his name is Jim Jones Jr.
Wow.
and he is the adopted son of Jim Jones, the
Wow.
cult
Yeah,
leader
right.
who
Yeah.
led everybody in Guyana to
Yep.
Wow.
Yikes.
so it was just like this yeah, it's just like a historical in that sense. I mean,
Yes.
it's a very
Wow.
Interesting.
unique, but
Mhm.
but a really interesting guy, really positive guy. I mean, we talked about the whole situation of what he went through, and so yeah, again, that's another story. That's another episode. But yeah, he was my partner in dialysis, sitting right next to me, and
Interesting.
yeah, that's another story. To know like that's another guy who also went through many different trials in his life,
Right.
Yep.
and still is like positive. Still, that was a huge inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you
Wow.
mentioned next time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is a reality I think rarely do people talk about either, right? Because as a recipient, I know that's hard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is that okay to go there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like I think this is something that people don't realize. A lot of times, if you are a recipient, there's a chance that you will need another, or that there will be another time.
Right.
And can you talk about that a little bit? Because I don't think people are really aware of that usually.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to talk about because you have so much put into what you're doing, and you're like this whole incident with UCLA, my own body, there are little things too where I would get into a place where I was like, okay, I missed one medication, but I'm gonna go to I'm gonna go to CVS pretty soon, and I'll get the refill. And then that turns into like 3 or 4 weeks where you're missing
Oh,
a
wow.
blood pressure medication,
Yeah.
and that affects certain things. And so, my currently am back on dialysis. I'm in the process of going through UCI now, so UC Irvine. And it's hard because I didn't know how to tell my aunt, because it feels like I'm letting her down.
Okay.
And even though we all have 2 kidneys,
Right.
so we're all like, and we only
Yeah.
need like 20% of our kidney to work to
Right.
actually like
Wow.
function. So you don't even
Right.
need 2 kidneys really, but we have 2 kidneys.
Wow.
Just in case. That's how our biology,
Right.
Yeah.
that's how we're created. That's great.
Right.
But to get another person's kidney, and then you feel like you're obligated to like do the best that you can. And if if it's failing,
Right.
then so I didn't know. But at the end of the day, I know my aunt gave it to me
Yeah.
without any like conditions. It
Right.
wasn't like she was going to be mad at me or anything.
Right.
But so I took a while. So I finally did at this Christmas gathering. I mentioned to my aunt, to my whole family, that my kidney was failing, and that was the first time I told my aunt. So yeah, it is hard. Hopefully I'm going through the process again. Actually, my father-in-law now has volunteered
wow.
to go through the process.
Yeah.
But I have a better understanding of the whole, what to do.
Right.
I
Because
think there's like a
you've
whole
been
thing.
through it.
Yeah, I think and that's why, like, for my podcast, I had an episode on this because there's a whole world of like we're talking about. There's a whole
Right.
understanding of mental health, of understanding your body, understanding your relationship with your doctor,
Mhm.
understanding all these different like facets of now that you're you know in this new world of a transplant. I even had a friend that was like, "Yeah, you just don't blame yourself because they're asking you to like be a doctor yourself
Right.
in a lot of ways
Mhm.
Yep.
because of all the things that you have to learn now and
Right.
do as a transplant recipient, as you know, with that holding that responsibility.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, that because you
It's
put a lot of
a lot. And
Yeah.
it takes a community. And
Yeah.
the truth is,
Yeah, it does.
this is a unique journey, but it also is a journey that you don't go on alone, right?
right.
But it's hard to let everybody in on that journey.
Yes, it
And
is.
it's the combination of feeling obligated in some ways in the most beautiful way of like wanting to honor, but at the same time you have the step back of like there's loss, there's worry, there's pressure, there's all these things, but we make those we can turn them negative or we can turn them positive. I think
Mhm.
there's a part of it of like looking at like you have this opportunity, you have these supportive people, you do have this environment, you are building the structure to make the most of all of this time.
Yeah.
Plus, this is time that, you know, 100 years ago you wouldn't have gotten,
Right.
right?
Yeah, right.
And so all the
Mhm.
impact you're making, both working at NAMI, the podcast you're doing, I mean, I think that's a big part of this too, is allowing people to feel,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know, and sometimes allowing others to do kind of gives us permission to do as well.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know if you share that, but that's kind of my feeling about it is like sometimes, you know, these conversations, I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, you know, it's on my list of people I need to call and reconnect and
Right.
check in on a couple of people. And, you know, I have a friend that I met online who actually is going back for, she's one of the longest living, I think she's a lung and heart transplant too.
Wow.
I think she got hers
Wow.
when she was like 16, and I think she's
Jeez.
right around 40 or whatever. And so she's been for years,
That's
right?
a blessing.
Yeah, and she's on the
Mm.
East Coast, so she has a big, huge doctor's appointment actually tomorrow. So after this, I'm gonna call her and kind of just check in.
Yeah. Wow.
This is, I think, part of the mental health aspect of maybe you know it's probably part of the reason you're drawn to where you work.
Mhm.
We're not isolated creatures, right?
Mm,
We're
mm,
social creatures,
mm.
but that comes with social responsibility, and it comes with impacts to each other, and being someone who either lifts other people up or understanding the impact you can have that brings other people down around you, right?
Mm.
And I think maybe if we could transition a little towards some of your mental health stuff and where you work at NAMI is like talk about some of the impacts there and the things that you see that are people are receiving, and then also the things that you've learned that have empowered you on this journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing that's really special about working at NAMI is that, you know, oftentimes when you're doing a job, you don't get to see the results of what you're doing.
Mhm.
Um, like if you're a teacher, you know, it takes maybe years to have that one student that comes back that says, "Oh, I'm a teacher," or "I'm successful because of your involvement in my life." Mental health is such we get people that come to our to call us that are really in crisis
Mm.
and they don't know where to start. And so we have the opportunity of taking them on a journey in this class. So if you're a family member who has a loved one who has a diagnosis, you can come to his class for free. You can join a community that has similar people that have similar experiences. You have the teachers that have lived experience themselves that are
Mhm.
teaching the class. And you have opportunities to ask questions, to share resources, to get all the different things that you might need for that time. Where you can get somebody at the end of the 8 weeks that come back to us and say, You you saved my family. You
Wow.
know, you were able to
That's
connect to my
rewarding.
uncle. I could talk to my brother. I understand them in a different way. And so that's really like special to be a part of.
Sure.
And then there's a program that, you know, because one of the things I always tell my, because as a manager, I tell the employees, like, find the one thing that you really like and try to cultivate that and try to focus on that because you can get caught. You know, a lot of times you get into a job and like 3 or 4 weeks into the job, you know what it is.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
basically fundamentally doing this, and like you can either allow that to like drag you down, or you
Right.
can say like, "There's a reason why you're here. Find the
Mhm.
thing that really, you know, gets you excited and like cultivate that." So the thing for me is there's a program called In Our Own Voice,
Mm.
where individuals with a diagnosis tell their story. And I was the host for that. I kind of brought the speakers together, and then I would host and announce them. And it's just amazing to hear people's stories of, again, resilience,
Right.
and where they've gone and
Yeah.
where they come from, and
That's true.
stories of like tremendous amount, not only just mental health, also abuse, also suicide, all these different things that layers, and then they're where they're at now,
Mhm.
and how they're living a successful life.
Right.
It's very inspiring to be a part of something like that. So those are the type of things that I think I've learned. I've learned that it's important to um, not only like understand a person's problem, but it's also very important to make sure you find the right community.
Right.
Absolutely. That's the
Yeah.
big part right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
Because
community.
it is. That's
Yeah.
really what it
Connected
is.
with the right people.
Well, it takes a lot also to be able to talk with someone or to find that right person that you can talk to, about. And I just remember like when you used to host the
Support groups.
support groups at the
Mhm.
hospital, it was like people would come with their families too, because even
Mhm.
families couldn't always understand what that person was going through. And
Right.
I think, having gone to just a few to check out, I think, once you realize you're in a place where you feel safe and you can talk about it, then it starts to become normal and we normalize it. And that's like our biggest thing that
Yeah.
we do here is like we have guests on to like talk
Yeah.
about stuff and we want to make it normal,
Right,
normal.
right, right,
So
right.
I think
I
it's
mean, you're right. Support groups are really important because, like Jada said, there were times where families would come, especially spouses, and it actually helped to save marriages or relationships because the spouse may have thought that the other person was not telling the truth about feeling,
or just the
sick,
unknown
or
too.
just like the unknown, or in a situation where they thought, well, this person is just being lazy, they making
Mhm.
up excuses. But then when they really found out how it can affect that person, then it was a change of heart. Like, oh my goodness, who knew? So it's important because it's educational.
Right.
Yeah.
It's definitely educational, and it can help family members or caregivers or whoever represents that person that's there. It gives you a better understanding of what they're actually going through. Because sometimes people just they don't understand,
Right.
and I'm sure you know this. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
but I'm glad you did have
and,
that support.
Yeah.
NAMI does great work. It's an
Mhm.
organization that I don't think gets enough credit. I say this as somebody who grew up in an environment where it's well documented that I grew up around people who have mental health issues. I grew up in an environment in entertainment where there's a lot of creative people who also have a lot of trauma and a lot of chaos, and a lot of that manifests itself in beautiful creativity, but also can manifest itself in some terrible lashing out in actions, and kind of learning. I mean, NAMI has so many different resources for people, but the area in my life that really transitioned for me was as a high school coach.
Mm.
We lost a player in a car accident one morning, and we utilized some of the NAMI stuff for some of our young people because it was their first experience losing someone. And I think that's it. It's we talk about it, and I think mental illness has a stigma. Those words historically have had a stigma, and we have to be very careful about how we do that because the truth is, I think most people struggle with some form of mental struggle at some time. All people, I think, get depressed at some time. You and I talked before the show that everyone experiences trauma
Mm.
at some different varying phase, and then the impact is different. But the idea having a mental illness, I think the number's 1 in 5. Is that right, Edward?
Yeah.
And so 1 in 5, that means if you're in a family, chances are somebody in your family has some elements of this, and they're going to share it with the people around them, and that's going to make an impact, and it may help increase the chances that someone else develops, right? Especially untreated or unaware. So when you think about 1 in 5, that means if you're a family of 4, chances are it's in your family no matter what. But if you have any kind of extended family, like we all have mental illness elements and psychological sections of our life that need to be addressed, that trauma needs to be shared, and then we need to find safe spaces. And sometimes your family's not in the best position, but sometimes your family can lead each other if you start improving yours, sharing what you learn, sharing these kind of resources.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the idea behind the grassroots aspect, is that we realize in NAMI that mental health professionals are always going to be in need. It's not like we're going to have every, person have a counselor. Even that's, we hope that, but it's really starts at the family, like you're saying. It does start at the family. And that's what we want to do, is empower families, empower parents, empower individuals to have live a successful life together, or in the case of a peer-to-peer class, it's their own life. So yeah, you're right. It is something that we think is really important to do it at the grassroots level.
Well, and my joke is like when two people, what you're going to be triggered by is different, and people in
Right.
your life are going to trigger different parts. So, like your family relationships are going to trigger you in a way that nobody at work is ever going to trigger you.
Totally.
A romantic relationship is going to trigger aspects of your life that nothing else triggers, right?
Marriage.
Yeah, marriage is like, and that's the thing is, and some of the stuff you experienced as a kid is going to come back.
Yeah,
Some of
yeah,
these
yeah,
things, like,
yeah.
so it's very funny because sometimes people are like, "Oh, I did the work on my own and I'm healed." It's like you can do work.
Yeah, of
You
course.
can
Yep.
heal aspects of things, right? And
Yep.
I'm not diminishing that in any way.
Right.
But the truth is, until you're interacting with other people
Yep.
or you're facing the things that maybe help start this process or triggered you in the very beginning, that's not healed. There's no growth that you can do on your own that involves the other people, right?
Yeah.
It's a collective thing.
Yeah, I like to say, the one thing also that I learned is there are different degrees of need.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would talk to somebody on the phone, and I started to understand that there's different levels where people are really there to need to get help. Some people are just in a panic and they're like, what do I need to do? What's going on? What's
Right.
going on?
Right.
Right.
Some people are like, I need help, and then you help them, and then they really don't need help. They really are still kind of stuck in their ways where they're
Mhm.
going to talk back. They're not really going to listen. There came to a point where I heard people, and I would say, okay, this person is really at the point that I can connect them to the right thing that they're asking for, and then they'll actually receive it.
Right.
And that's the same thing, even with, I went through that myself with my kidney, where my doctor told me, I came to him and I was like, you're telling me I can't eat, you're telling me I can't drink, I can't do anything. It's unreasonable.
Right.
And my doctor said, Edward, I'm asking you to eat like a normal person. I'm not asking you to do anything out of the ordinary. And I was like, I eat like a normal person. What are you talking about?
Yep.
Right.
That-
And
Yeah.
it actually didn't take until I was at the point of losing my kidney this time around,
Right.
where my wife and I really changed our diet. Like, we went completely, like, whatever we need to do to help
Right.
save this kidney if we
Mhm.
can. And I realized, yeah, I understand what he was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Now I see that I was I'm not, I was overeating in the sense that, like, I realized that I could limit what I was doing. I
Right.
could, I mean, so that, to me, I think that's a place of, you get to a place where you actually are ready to receive
Yep.
Mhm.
the help.
yeah,
That's
and
true.
learning to listen. I
Yeah.
think that's one of those things. I think that's a lifelong lesson for all of us at
Yep.
certain times, right? Learning to listen and knowing how to receive, but also from a support structure. As someone goes to heal or someone is working through these processes, right? And working through their mental health, being a safe space requires you to be in a place that you can receive things that are hard to hear or things that you may not be comfortable with completely,
Right.
but loving someone enough to make space. And then it's also, the truth is, we all decide when we're ready to make changes, right?
Yeah.
And some changes may seem extraordinary or unreasonable until you get to that point where all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, you want me to like never do this, but that's a normal part of my life. But then you start to go, okay, well, I'm just going to progressively decrease it. And you're like, hey, this is not so bad,
Right.
right? And you're like, I can live with, I can go eat here. I can eat fried food once every couple of weeks, as opposed to I didn't realize how much I was doing it, right? Sometimes you start to do these things,
Lifestyle change.
and these lifestyle changes
Yeah.
don't have to be 100% overnight, and they don't have to be so massively invasive. You can kind of progressively move through them. And I think that's the other part is people around you need to look at you and be like, I see you making that move, right? I see you making that change, and be positive in that manner, because you might want somebody to change overnight, but the reality is that's not realistic. They didn't
Yeah.
become this person overnight.
Right.
So they're not going to become somebody else overnight
They
just
have to
because we
want to do it
realize.
too.
Yeah,
It
true.
can't just be a
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
work that way. Our bodies
Yeah.
don't work that way.
Yeah.
That's the other part. Like even just a processing part. Like when you change your diet, your body has to go through kind of this reaction phase too. And there's lots of times you start eating certain ways. You're like, I don't feel. You say it's better food, but I don't feel great, right?
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or my taste buds are looking at me going, "This is not exactly what you advertised, right? I
Right.
know this is supposed to be
But
good
then
for
you
me, but
notice those little changes.
and you find
throughout.
ways,
Yeah.
right? Like
yeah.
people who grew up who didn't eat a lot of vegetables. If you can find ways that are palatable to you, it's a much easier transition, right? And some of that is the people around us didn't do that. Or, going to family functions. Listen, I have one part of my family, they eat whatever is the richest, best tasting, whatever, right? But there's some health stuff going on there. So when you look at the table, you're like, whew. Sometimes I look at the table, like the holidays just passed not that long ago. I look at the table going,
It's every day.
like, wow, like you guys eat like this all the time. And I'm looking at the table going, there's not a lot here that my body wants, right? But that's also kind of finding, I can't change everybody in the room,
No.
right? And it'd be unreasonable for me to
Yeah.
walk in and be like, this place, all this food's terrible. It's like, no,
Yeah.
it's actually tastes good, but I'm going to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you have to kind of find that middle ground, find
Yeah.
that connective place. And I think this is one of the places for mental health is we label people sometimes. Sometimes people label so they can push away. Really need to be listening to people so that we can hear their journey and their story. And I think that's a big part of it. I mean, Jada and I have talked about this a lot. It's like to hear people's story, to make space to actually hear what
Yeah.
people are saying, because most people are pretty good at talking because they know what they're supposed to say. Some people work on listening, but receiving is a different thing.
Yeah.
Making space is a different thing. Really hearing someone.
Edward, I
It's
have,
huge. Yeah.
and I know we have to start wrapping up. What advice would you give to the viewers and listeners who are going through preparing for a transplant or who've already gone through their transplant? What would you say to them?
I would say to really understand that you're your best advocate
Mhm.
and the doctors are part of your care team. We give a lot of credit to doctors, and we should, because they're experts in a lot of ways. But you're your own expert at your own body,
Mhm.
and understand that. And I don't think I really grasped that throughout the whole process. And until really now, understanding that. I think that's one of the biggest things I would say, because you're they're gonna be there to help, but ultimately you're the one you're the one living with the kidney. You're the one
Right.
living with the transplanted, organ. So I would say that's, understand that. Really, really walk in that authority of you being your own advocate
Right.
and practicing that, because um if you give so much power to the other, to the doctors, to other people, um, that can ultimately be a negative in your health, because again, they're advising. They're just looking, they're trying to solve, their scientists in a way, they're
Sure.
doctors trying to solve a problem.
Mhm.
And they might not even see you as like a whole person sometimes, because they're so busy. They just kind of see you as a number, and you're just a
True.
patient number
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7,
Right.
whatever.
And they may have, this is the one thing I always tell people in anything, but medical field especially, is they have a bunch of patients. So I used to tell
Exactly.
people,
Right.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
always tell people, tell them, like, whether it be in the medical field for me, whether it be an agent in a business sense for me, and you have lots of clients, you have lots of patients. There's only one of me. Like,
Right.
I got to be invested in my life in a different way.
That's
like
right.
you're
Ask
saying.
the questions though. Like ask the questions.
Right.
Like a lot of times, like I remember one of the procedures I had to get, I wrote down stuff because when you're in the moment, you don't
Yeah.
always remember to be like, oh, I forgot to ask about that. It's like while they're there, if you have, any additional questions or something is different here, ask them. You have them right in your face.
Yes, write down questions.
Yeah.
I always tell people, write down questions. Let your family members give you questions.
Yeah.
Because I always would open things up to family members, and a lot of it is like, I don't need to hear that, or I don't necessarily. But part of it was one good question that you may not have thought of
Yeah.
Right.
can be life changing.
Yep.
And I think it's really important, and be willing to. Sometimes they have to rush in and out of rooms. Don't always let them rush in and out of yours, right?
Yeah.
Because make sure they answer the questions that you need answered, or have them refer you to somebody else in their office or somebody else who can, because you need the answers, because you got to
Right.
live with it.
Yep.
Definitely.
That's
And
good.
utilize those support groups.
Yeah.
Just saying. Can't
That's
say that enough.
That's some really good advice. So, how can people get in touch with you at the organization and for your podcast?
Yeah, so you can go to our website at namioc.org. That's namioc.org is all of our programs. Everything's free for the public. And at our website we have our excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
first time that I coughed.
Okay.
We have our It's Okay to Feel link there.
Mhm.
But you can also email the show at itsokaytofeel@namioc.org.
Okay.
So that's the best way to get a hold of that. And it's bi-weekly. So we have a young person's, it's called Anxiety Sucks. It's for the transitional age youth, a podcast. And then mine's kind of like a more general audience
Okay.
podcast called It's Okay to
I
Feel.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm loving the names. Whoever's coming up with them are right on. You know what I mean? So
Did
Yeah.
you come up with that name? I love it.
And-
Oh, it's okay to feel.
It's Okay to Feel.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
I love that though.
Yeah.
It's so great.
Well, and I'm going to say, you mentioned earlier, and I advocate for people out there when you meet somebody, because you mentioned like the marks from getting dialysis, right? People don't realize when you see somebody, let's not make such an assumption about what some of these marks are, or what the bruises are, or what the,
Yeah.
like, if you really care, take the time to have a conversation with somebody, or just give them the benefit of the doubt. Because, like, people who have dialysis, you mentioned wearing long sleeve shirts, right? Because other people have a reaction.
Mhm.
It sucks that has to be part of your daily, right? Like, that it is a thought process, but it is something that people react to, right? So if we can ask people to be more kind, to understand that the people around you are going through something, because I think that's another part of this, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. On that, what it reminds me of, it also means a word of advice to people. If you know somebody that's at dialysis, don't ever ask them, how was dialysis?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's right.
Because it's never good.
It's never good.
It's like, oh, they stuck needles in me.
Right,
What's it-
right,
Like, I'm
yeah.
better now because I'm here, but
But that's a good point,
Uh.
though, because maybe people don't know what to say to
Yeah.
someone
That's true.
that's going through it. So by you saying that, maybe they'll stop asking people,
Or
how
just give
was
them support,
dialysis?
right? Like,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
how was dialysis, but
Yeah.
like, oh, I know you did dialysis this week. Way to keep going. Like,
yeah,
make it
exactly.
something
Yeah.
positive,
Encouragement.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because people, I think, mean
But
it
don't
well,
ask.
but,
Yeah.
Exactly.
but it's like,
You know.
oh yeah, you're reminding me about one of the worst parts of my week,
Right.
and a painful experience,
What do you want me to
right?
say? I don't know.
Like,
Yeah.
and I think we do this so often, just in general,
Anything.
mental health.
Yeah.
It's
That's
like,
a good
Yeah.
point,
it
though. That's
is-
a really good
sometimes we mean well, but we're
Right.
like, I'm asking you to recall something really painful or
Yeah.
unenjoyable in your life.
Draining.
And then also sometimes I think people don't know how to process it. So that's the way they make themselves feel safe. Like, I think I'm supposed to address this, but I'm
Yeah.
not really sure.
Yeah.
So they ask this really vague general question. It's like, it sucked. Like,
Yeah.
that's not like, that's the worst part of my week, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But
ask
that's a
me
good
about my
point.
marriage. Ask
That's a
me
good
about
point
life.
that Edward actually brought up. He's like, don't ask that.
Yeah.
And then maybe people will learn from this that, that's not a good question to ask someone that's going through what you said that you go through.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's like letting them relive it. Like, I don't like it. So, you know what I mean? It's
And that goes for
Yeah.
chemo, that goes for
anything.
like
Yeah.
a lot of these medical
Yeah.
things. Like,
Yeah.
I know it's well intended, but just give people the voice of support and ask them about stuff they like.
Yeah.
Like, ask them
Yeah.
about something they're passionate about, because nobody likes going to the
Yeah.
doctor.
Yeah,
all the
nobody
time.
wants to be defined by their
Right.
illness.
Right.
That's
what
right.
we
You don't want to
say.
be the
Yep.
person that's like, oh, you're the dialysis guy.
That's
Yep.
right.
You're
Yes.
because you're the person that has the kidney. Nobody wants to feel like that as well.
No.
So that's the other thing. You don't want to always be reminded that you're
That's right.
in this position.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. You know, you don't want to be
Defined by your
reminded, or like you said, defined by the illness. That's not who you are.
Mhm.
No, it's
You
something you
know?
deal with, right?
Yeah.
It's a part of your life. It's a part of your
Mhm.
journey.
Right.
But that's not who you are. That's
Exactly.
not the main portion.
Right.
You know, that's not who you are, Ed. Like,
Yeah.
like that's
Yeah.
an interesting part of your story that you shared, so that people can see,
Yeah.
and so that people can hopefully get information and
Mm-hmm.
be better educated to empower them, right? That's why we share our journey. It's not to like be like, hey, this is who I am because of
Right.
this. It's like, no, this is things you should look out for to help raise awareness and help empower you
Yeah.
in case you have a similar situation.
Yep.
Right.
Definitely.
Well, Edward, we appreciate you coming here today,
Oh, yeah.
especially with everything that you have to deal with. That we're definitely thankful for you to take the time to come here and share
story.
your journey with us and with the viewers. So, thank
My
you
pleasure.
again. Thank
Yeah.
you
Thanks for
again.
having me.
And not only that, we wish you and your family continued blessings
Thank you.
throughout the year and beyond. And just know that you'll be fine.
Thank
You'll
you.
be fine. So,
Thank you.
yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Thanks for tuning
Yeah.
in, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.
See ya.